This is TWiT.
It's perfect timing to introduce our guest, who's a little early, but we're glad he's here. Richard Skrenta is the executive director of Common Crawl. He is in witness protection right now. As soon as there he is,
there we go.
We'll wait a moment, give him a moment to get the audio and video working. We jumped right on him as soon as he showed up in the interview. So I want to get as much time with Mr. Skrenta as we can. Richard, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Excellent.
And
Yes.
what screen do you have?
Can you see us?
I can see all of you. Thank you so much for having me.
Marvelous.
Really
so
appreciate
nice.
it.
We've actually kind of set you up. Jeff talked about the event that he and Paris attended last year, and we talked about Common Crawl's mission. And in a way, we've set you up with this first story where we're talking about Reddit telling the Internet Archive, you can't archive our pages because we sold them already to OpenAI. There's a tension between AI companies that want to absorb as much information, quality information as they can, content companies that say, but this costs us a lot of money to make. We want to get compensated for it. And then I'll add the third party to this, which is we, the users, who we just want to be able to go to a page and get an answer. We don't want to get involved in this.
And a quality answer.
A quality answer. Tell us how Common Crawl kind of solves this or cuts this Gordian knot.
Well, yeah, it's a really complex and interesting question. I will mention maybe a related topic. We participate in an effort called the End of Term Archive that is run by the Library of Congress. So when a presidential administration changes, there's an effort coordinated by Internet Archive, Common Crawl, University of Texas, and other entities to go capture pages. Let's go get the 80,000 pages on cdc.gov that are about to be vaporized, right? And let's put them in the Internet Archive, and we'll put them in our S3 bucket at Common Crawl, and we'll save them, for posterity. And our CTO, Greg Lindahl, led this effort for us. And we were sort of surprised to find that many government websites, including the Library of Congress itself, which is running this effort, congress.gov, had actually been shadow banned by their network providers. So IA, Internet Archive, was not able to crawl them. And the webmasters at the Library of Congress had no idea that this had been done to them. This is surprising, right? The recent moves by Cloudflare, which I think 20% of the internet is behind, they've banned crawlers, and they're trying to shake down the AI companies for money. And these publishers aren't going to get any of that money, right? Gary Tan from Y Combinator recently posted and said, hey, Y Combinator's official website was banned by Cloudflare, and they had no idea. And somebody on Twitter said, hey, well, you should log into your Cloudflare console every day and check. See. I'm like, oh, come on. I mean, that's preposterous. The Children's Hospital of LA has a auto-generated robots.txt that came out of Cloudflare. And it bans GPT-bot, it bans CC-bot. Theoretically, it allows retrieval augmented generation RAG. But here's the problem. If you're not in the foundational model, it's not going to even know to recommend you to go to that website.
Oh, right.
We recently attended an event in Washington, D.C. It was a room full of travel executives, Marriott, Hilton. Marriott spends $1 billion a year on SEO to get into Google, to get into search one.
Really? $1 billion on SEO?
Yes.
Wow.
They want to get into the LLMs because when you go to ChatGPT or Claude and say, hey, where should I stay in Honolulu? They want to be in the answer. They want to be in that data set. So we are seeing a shift from, the sort of knee-jerk opt-out to a desire to opt in by the most forward-thinking brands and publishers.
So, Rich, this week I met with a head of business at a newspaper company I shall not name. And in the one breath, he's whining to me about how do we get discovered? We're losing search, we're losing social, we're losing all this. How do we get discovered in AI? And the next breath is, well, we have to protect our intellectual property, so we're blocking all of the AI. I said, then how are you going to get discovered when people are using agents and get in that world? It was, you just look on his face, it was like, and it's an uncertain mechanism of discoverability, but it's an important mechanism of discoverability. And we always talk about this in terms of content brands, but you raise a really important point about informational brands like hospitals and sales brands like hotels. They need to be crawled for their benefit, right?
That's absolutely right. I really think that publishers are going to regret asserting their right to be forgotten. If somebody comes to us and says, "Hey, take us out of your index," I'm like, "Sure, we're not gonna fight that," even if we don't think they even have a legal basis to do so. As a courtesy, we'll stop crawling you. We'll take you out. But it takes us months to do crawls, and it takes months to do AI training. And going beyond that, we are going to begin publishing what we call an annotation, an opt-out registry. So we are going to alert the ecosystem downstream from us. And we're ahead of, we're upstream of thousands of LLMs. But we're going to say, hey, here are all the people that have notified us that they don't want to be in our data set. And, these are potentially litigious publishers. So, if you're doing model training or data science research, you shouldn't include them.
But you should also know how limited the data you're going to get is now, and the bias that's in the data set as a result to them.
It's often these publishers think that their content's super cool, and a lot of times it is. Opt-outs make me sad. They really do. If
it's ultimately a violation of the notion of an open web. If you put something on the web,
that's right.
At least initially, the thought was information wants to be free. You put it on the web so we can all benefit
equally.
That's right.
But I understand every constituency has a point. They put a lot of money in creating that content, and they want somehow to recoup that investment. They don't want what they particularly don't want, and creators don't want. And by the way, I'm speaking for them, even if I don't agree with them. Is they don't want big tech companies like OpenAI, Google, et cetera, to take their content for free and then monetize it.
But how valuable is it? It's the same problem with Google search. The news publishers insist that they're incredibly valuable to Google search when less than 3% of searches involve news. And I think the same thing is going to be true all the more so with LLMs, that the news stuff isn't that valuable. It's as far as training goes, it's fungible, no?
There's a second part, which is like the Wikimedia Foundation, which says these AI crawlers are killing our servers because we are the number one source for many AI models, as they should be. And it's not that we want to keep the information from them, but it's very costly for us to serve their crawlers. You solve that problem to some degree, right?
We do. Our chairman and founder, Gil Elbaz, has, from the beginning, 18 years ago, said, hey, we don't want thousands of people crawling all these websites. We should centralize the crawl.
Have a common
responsible
crawl.
Source, which is what we do. And I do get sad by the opt-outs, but here's the thing. Sure, New York Times wants to go get money from OpenAI. I get that. But they are denying their content to thousands or tens of thousands of small little projects, individual researchers, PhD students who want to do something. And the New York Times articles are not going to be in that research.
Right.
They're just gone. And, let me put this in perspective. When we crawl, our robot, CCBot, goes out every month, and it's using a frontier of pages that we know about, URLs, which is about 1 trillion pages.
Jesus.
And then we crawl 5 billion. So, if you take your 10,000 pages from caranddriver.com or something off the web, it doesn't matter. We will always be able to get another 5 billion pages.
What are the uses? Go ahead, Paris, you go.
I was going to say, if you could rewrite robots.txt for this AI era. What would you want to add to it? And who do you think should kind of be adjudicating these disputes?
This is a very active topic of conversation. We go to events worldwide, Brussels, Paris, London, Boston, DC. I've talked to the White House a couple of times about all this. There's a lot of people talking about opt-out protocols, and we like to be in those conversations, and we participate in them. However, I personally feel that talking about opt-out protocols implicitly positions AIs as an adversary.
Yes.
Something that you want to opt out of. And I don't feel that way. I'm actually AI positive. I want them to be aligned with us. I want them to read all these books, right? And be better aligned with humanity. I think it's a force for good. And I personally would like to see an expansion of fair use. Robots are people too. A robot's going to walk into a library, and it should be able to read the books. This is, in my opinion, inevitable. You'll buy a robot, it will be carrying, your mother's groceries in the grocery store. It's going to look at stuff. It's going to hear music that's playing in the background. It's absurd to think that it will not be allowed to model train in real time on this material.
So, yeah, I'm 100% in your court, and I've tried to argue this case, and I always get hit by people who say, yeah, but all the authors of those books behind you shouldn't they have a say in whether AI can read their books? And your position is an AI is no different than a human, right? That they have a right to read. That's
right. One of the books on the shelf behind me is a self-published book by Brian Deere, and you might remember this this thread from Facebook that you participated in, Jeff. And Brian wrote a historical book about an old computer system, and he self-published it because there's no interest in this thing. But I collect old computer books, and so I bought a copy of his book about Plato, the Plato system. But he got very mad. That he asked, GPT-3 or something, some question about his book, and it actually had read it and it knew something about it. And I just, and Jeff and Brian had this back and forth on Facebook where Jeff argued that he doesn't publish books himself just to make money, but also to spread his ideas. And I was thinking, Brian, you should be happy that someone read your book, even if it was an AI.
That's like the judge who unfortunately made the wrong decision in one of those two recent court cases in California, who said Danielle Steele doesn't have anything to worry about, so we're going to let AI read her stuff. It's the people, but it's the Brian Deeres of the world that have something to worry about. Quite the opposite, right?
Right. And in the Anthropic case, Leo, as we talked about at the time, Anthropic was okay with the books it bought, though those were used books, so the authors didn't get anything out of it.
Yeah.
But they acquired it properly. To follow on Paris's question, Rich, I too, as you know, agree about training as fair use and transformative. Paris will disagree in some ways, but to go to the next level of RAG, when you do quote things and you do link to them, is there an ethic developing in AI you see at all about how to at least attribute and link and so on? Would that be helpful?
I think it would be, and I know the big organizations are working on this attribution, citing your sources, being able to track referrals separately, right? Like, let's say you're getting traffic from a big search engine, and you want to know, hey, is it coming from the 10 blue links on Search 1.0, or is it coming from the AI answer? If you could track those referrals separately, I think it would calm people down, right? And there's probably two categories of content on the web, right? Like we've all been doing like SEO and search for a long time. There's a bunch of sort of junk content out there, like, what time is the Super Bowl? And then you've got some ads on it. And that's kind of silly, right? Because, the search engine could just give you the answer. But then there's searches that result in a conversion, right? Because you're going to buy something like, hey, I want to buy a pellet smoker, or I want to, go buy a new car or something. And you're going to end up going to the website, right, and initiating that conversion. And if they could tell that high quality referral came from the AI answer, I think people would be a lot happier.
That's a good point. They don't know, and they're just assuming they're not generating any traffic from anything but the 10 blue links.
Right.
People in our YouTube chat are saying, you're acting as if these robots are people. How can you assign rights to AI? These are big tech machines. These aren't people.
I think specifically what some of them are referring to is that obviously there are kind of open source LLMs and models, but I think a lot of what people are responding negatively to is the idea that corporate, increasingly for-profit entities have a seemingly God-given right to scoop up everybody's allegedly copyrighted content.
Well, Common Crawl started a long time before all this technology developed, right? It started in 2007, and it was kind of a sleepy project for most of its life. 18 years crawling the web and giving it away for free. It's been a tremendous data science resource, cited in 10,000 research papers. It's a huge resource for machine translation. We crawl 110 languages currently.
Wow.
We want to take that up to 1,000. We're 43% English, right? And basically every other language is something that we consider low resourced. We want to fix that. We want to crawl more Catalan, Indonesian, and so forth. But starting in about 2022, the LLM started to consume all this content, and then we sort of had this AI explosion. But the problem is if you opt yourself out of this data set because you're mad at a big company or somebody that just raised $100 million for their AI startup or something, you're denying it to like thousands of other efforts that don't have that resource. The current executive director for ML Commons, Rebecca Weiss, did her PhD at Stanford using Common Crawl. And if you're not in Common Crawl, you're not going to be in her data set for that. And there's a lot of Rebecca Weisses out there all over the world that are trying to do good work. So there's a lot of collateral damage if publishers just opt out of this open non-commercial data set that's really important.
I'll point people to your August 11th article on commoncrawl.org. AI optimization is here. Are you ready for Search 2.0? Let me ask some questions about Common Crawl specifically. So is it like Google? I mean, do you crawl everything? Do you crawl the entire web? It sounds like you do with 1 trillion pages as your frontier.
We know about 1 trillion pages, but we only, I think we yield about, approximately 3 billion per month.
So you're not trying to get everything, or are you?
We call it an academic sampling of the web. And it's 50% pages that we already know about that we're going to recrawl, and then 50% new pages. So out of all the pages we know about, each month we're crawling about 1/4 of the web.
And you preserve the entire page. You don't just, it's not just a search engine or
We're not a search engine. We crawl HTML, PDFs, and text documents.
And you
not
preserve
images.
all
No
of the
images,
content.
no video.
Okay.
And then
But all of the textual content you preserve.
That's right.
Okay. So it is ideal, frankly, for an LLM. Yes?
Yeah.
Is it reasonable to say maybe that the solution to these 3 different constituencies is to have a single common crawl that everybody uses for their training purposes? Are AI companies open to that thought?
I think most are. Yeah. I mean, I think we are 90 to 100% of the training tokens in pretty much every LLM.
Holy cow. So really,
Karen Howe's book, just to say that 1 second, Karen Howe's book about OpenAI talks about how they supplemented Common Crawl, though, with other sources. So I think there is
I'm sure everybody wants a differentiator, right?
Yes.
We don't want to all be using the same stuff. At the same time, as it solves this problem of 100 crawlers bringing Wikimedia down because everybody's trying to keep slurping up the same content over and over again. If you have one trusted company, nonprofit, I should mention, doing this on behalf of everybody, that seems like a good solution. What about I guess then the next mission is to make sure that everybody who puts content on the internet allows Common Crawl in. What kind of rejection do you, first of all, you honor robots.txt, I presume, yes?
Oh, yeah. We strictly honor robots.txt. We have a really good parser for it.
So if you have CCBot blocked in your robots.txt, Common Crawl will not go farther to those
That's
pages.
correct.
Yeah.
And CCBot identifies itself. We publish our IP addresses that we crawl from. If you don't want to be in the data set, we won't crawl you.
So you're totally on the up and up as far as a content creator is. You solve this Cloudflare issue. We can debate back and forth why they want to be the toll keeper on the internet, et cetera, et cetera. But it sounds like this is the solution. So now
what's happened to your rejection rate, though?
Yeah, that's the question: is how many people say no, and how do you
versus
those
10 years ago?
I would say it's gone up to 25%.
Ouch!
Wow.
From what was it, Rich, 10 years ago?
0.
Yeah.
Nobody objected.
I joined Common Crawl 2.5 years ago. And when I joined, our chairman, Gil, said in 15 years, he'd never taken a bite of the data out of the archive.
Huh.
But because of the moral panic surrounding AI, we started to get these legal demands saying, hey, you guys should take us out. And I said, let's not fight any of these. Let's not even decide if they're valid or not, right? There's a 3-year statute of limitations on copyright, but somebody wants to take 18 years. Yes.
I didn't know that.
You can. There's a 28-page response from OpenAI to New York Times, and you can read it, and it's pretty interesting. And Jeff, in your congressional testimony, you said, hey, copyright was never even intended to apply to news, right? Originally. And if a paper of record like the New York Times wants to erase 20 years of things that happened from an open, public, free data set, that's just not good for civic society. That's not good. But we're not. We're a tiny organization. We are a nonprofit, and we're not gonna fight that. We'll pretend that these guys have a time machine and could go back to 2007 and robots ban us. Sure, if you don't want to be in it, we'll take you out. You in the future, I think many of these folks are going to change their mind,
right,
and want to get back in.
Do you have a mechanism for that?
No.
So
no, I will never put them back in.
You do so at your peril, creators. So I think that's the mission at this point, is to convince people that it is to your detriment to not be part of the global information commons. That this is a public benefit, and it doesn't hurt you. In fact, I think you've made a good case in your article that it helps you in the long run. This drives traffic in much the same way web search drives traffic.
That's right. You could think of Common Crawl as being a distribution mechanism for web content, right? So, like we crawl the web, and you don't want 10,000 people crawling your website. So, it'd be nice if we did it. We do it responsibly, and then we give it away for free. And we're upstream of all these other projects. Now, if you go to one of these big companies that raised a whole ton of money and they've got your content in it, you can contact them directly and say, hey, you should pay us a license fee, or you should take us out, or, we want a rev share or something. But if you're not in the distribution path in the first place, you don't have that opportunity. And there's so many non-commercial open source projects, researchers, PhD students trying to use this data too, that if you kind of just say, oh, I'm really mad that, some big startup raised, $1 billion. But then you're sort of erasing your content from, from the rest of the web.
I have a free subscription to the Wall Street Journal because I'm an academic. They want it out there.
Yeah,
right?
isn't
In that
that
sense.
interesting? Yeah.
I'm curious, Rich, a little before you got there, but still, the lore of the organization. As you said, Common Crawl is going along quietly, boop-a-doop-a-doop, we're doing this wonderful thing, and then suddenly it's discovered by the AI companies. Did Common Crawl realize what was going on, or were they suddenly seeing, why are we suddenly popular?
We did see our usage skyrocket. Shortly after I joined, we put out a crawl. I think it was in September of 2023, and they don't want me to say this, but it burned down Amazon's infrastructure.
Because you're running on Amazon, on AWS.
Yeah, they give us generous hosting support since the start of this project. We're part of their open data initiative, and we're very grateful for
God's
that.
work.
But there were just so many people trying to pull that September crawl that it turned out we had the most popular S3 bucket ever. And it fried the interconnects between Amazon and other large clouds. And so we had to put some eyes on that and put some rate limits in place and fix it. But it is an extremely popular data set.
What do you want to do to the data set? You're trying more languages. What else are you doing to improve the data set?
For our roadmap, yes, we want to expand coverage of low resource languages. Second, the data set is about 11 petabytes right now, which is just unwieldy, right? Like big companies, well-funded companies can process that. But like burning that down, like if you want to do your own custom extraction of that HTML, is about $200,000, right?
Whoa.
In a cloud. And so, Rebecca Weiss, when she's doing her PhD at Stanford using Common Crawl, doesn't have a $200,000 compute budget, right? She's got some free credits that Stanford gave her or something. So what does she do? Well, she picks 1 month from 2013, and that's her data set. That's not ideal. We would like to do better extractions of the data per language, per topic, or even going to something like question and answer pairs. I sold a search engine to IBM way back in 2015, and at the 11th hour.
To Watson, right?
To Watson, IBM Watson, yeah. And they threw this challenge task at us at the 11th hour, and they said, "Hey, can you find all the Q&A pairs on the internet for Watson?" And so I'm like, my CTO Greg and I are like,
Was this when it was training for Jeopardy by any chance?
It was after Jeopardy.
Okay.
So
They'd say, well, can you give us all the A and Q pairs? Then you might have said, yeah.
I wrote a regular expression that started with who, what, when, where, why is, and then had some other garbage on the end. And then we pulled 68 million Q&A pairs off the internet.
Oh my God.
And gave it to Watson. And they're like, yeah, all right, we'll buy you. So they bought our
That was a nice.
That was in 2015.
The most valuable grep ever.
And it's 10 years later in 2025.
Yeah.
And we have way better tools than regular expressions to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
So we want to find all the Q&A pairs on the internet and classify them by language and by topic. Hey, give me all the STEM Q&A pairs in Indonesia, right? And that, compared to the 11 petabytes that you would have to train on, that's just such a potent training source that we think it would put accessibility of the data set in hands of, individuals or smaller teams.
I'm looking at your August 25 crawl archive. You put out many crawls every year. This is 2.44 billion pages and 88 terabytes compressed. But you're saying that it isn't, most people wouldn't want the dump. They would want tools to work on that content. Or is that right? Did you offer that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what if you just want, Catalan?
Right. I don't need all
now,
of that. Yeah.
I way back when we were doing our search engine that we ended up selling to IBM, we met with the CTO for Naver, the Korean search engine, and he was sort of bemoaning the fact that Korean is like 0.1% of the internet, but in order to get that 0.1%, you have to crawl the whole thing, right? Because it's on Blogspot and WordPress, and it's all over the place, and so you have to crawl the entire internet just to extract this tiny amount that you want. So if we could do these pre-extractions and make them available, we think that would make the data just way more accessible to small teams.
You invited me to a session that you co-hosted at the Internet Alliance, right? Is that right? That was held in New York. And one discussion there was a lot about croissant, not as a food, but as a standard for maintaining data about what is used. Can you talk more about? Because I'm really interested in developing, as we talked about earlier, the ethics of these uses, and tell me more about that work around the responsible use of data and how that's developing.
Right. Yeah. Great question. We people have asked us, like, hey, do you filter your content? And in general, we don't want to, right? Somebody might say, oh, you should have a filter for hate speech, right? And don't put that in the crawl. But there might be valid reasons where a researcher would want to do a study, and measure the prevalence of hate speech in a certain market. And what is hate speech? Well, it depends on what jurisdiction you're in, right? It's a different definition in the UK, the US, and Germany, right? So do we want to take this material out? And can we develop a good filter for that? Well, it's probably not going to be perfect. It's not going to be 100%. It might be 90%. That'd be a pretty good filter, but it'll make mistakes. And then if you built a product and relied on that, we don't really want that responsibility, right? That's kind of up to you to figure out. So our going forward approach is to develop a set of what we're calling annotations, right? Let's label stuff. And then if you want to take it out, you can. Now, I will say that we do, there's actually a whole bunch of categories of things that might be problematic. Copyright is one. I have a letter from the National Music Publishers Association that are very concerned that song lyrics might exist on the internet.
No!
Horror.
Heavens.
Song lyrics are, I'm not going to write a song lyric detector. I don't even, like, the letter I is a song lyric, right?
Yeah.
It's impossible, right? But there's other things. There's,
hey, hey.
There's CSAM, there's child porn, right? There's revenge porn, which is NCII, GDPR, CCPA, PII, health information. There's security things, like people accidentally post their, GitHub secret keys,
right,
or HTML. We get a lot of alerts about this kind of stuff. We get letters, people send us emails. We work with the Internet Archive, Stanford, Meta, other organizations, and they're like, hey, we found some stuff in your crawl. You should know about this. And we're like, oh gosh, we put eyes on all these things. We take them out when we think it's appropriate. We validate it. And so our goal is really to try and be the most responsible, cleanest, archive that it can be. Now it's 300 billion pages spanning almost 2 decades. So I can't guarantee that there's not bad stuff in there. I mean, the internet is constantly trying to attack you, generally for spam and monetary reasons. But there are these bad things. But we do care, and we put eyes on this, and we try and take out stuff. And when CCBot, poor little CCBot goes out onto the web, and it's got its trillion URL frontier, and it's going to get 5 billion pages because that's its budget, right? But all things being equal, if it could turn left instead of right and go into nutritious content instead of a cesspool, we would prefer that it does so.
Yeah.
The other thing that we talked about in the event that you and I had in New York is there's so much talk about what to take off the internet and take out of your crawl and take out of AI, when what's missing, the problem with AI, is the bias to those who had the power and privilege of publishing in the past. What we should be talking about is what do we add in? How are, in the United States, how are underrepresented groups not included? You're doing this in worldwide languages. There's all kinds of stuff that's missing from a snapshot and a picture of our digital corpus that is the basis of both search and AI. And that's the conversation I wish we were having. Do you hear that from anybody?
Yeah, that's a great point. 2 years ago when I joined, we started talking to the consumers of our data, and many of them said, "We want more. Like our LLM wants it to be bigger. Can you 10x your crawl?" And so I went to our engineering team and I said, "Hey, let's just 10x the crawl." And they're like, "Hold on, Rich. Here's the problem. If you push against that, the quality might go down, right?" So think about like a really great site like Wikipedia, right? The first 50 pages, by PageRank on Wikipedia are excellent. And if you go and try and AstroTurf them, your vandalism will be undone within seconds because there's so many eyes on it. And that's true like down to like about 50,000. And then if you go from 50,000 to 500,000, those pages are all still pretty good, right? They're reasonable articles, well researched, and if you mess with them, somebody's going to notice. But then if you go down to like 5 or 10 million, the size of the article starts to shrink, right? And maybe it hasn't been updated in months, and there's not eyes on it. And so this is true for most websites. Like as you push deeper into the site, you can't be assured that the quality is still there. So we do want more content, and we want underrepresented content, underrepresented languages, but we want to be very mindful that we maintain the quality of our crawl. We've had independent assessments done on our crawl. We did a collaboration with ML Commons, and we had human raters, look at it, and some engineers from Google, and they said, "Wow, it's actually better than we thought." So I was happy about that. But we don't want to, if you go out and just naively try and crawl as much of the web as you can, a lot of times you just get a bunch of junk, and you get a bunch of spam or misinfo, and we want to be really conscious of that.
I want to be conscious of your time too, Rich, because I know you're a busy guy, and we are so grateful for the work you do as executive director of Common Crawl. If your AI returns good information, if your orchestrator is giving you useful bits and pieces, probably 90% of that's because of Common Crawl and what Rich Skrenta has done. What I did not mention, and I hope you won't mind me mentioning this, is your history is fascinating.
So fascinating.
Rich wrote one of the very first large-scale self-spreading personal computer viruses when he was 15 in high school. You might remember
And
Elk
it famously displayed a poem every 50th boot.
It infected the boot sectors on Apple II computers. What was great is it resided in memory, and if you stuck in a new disk, it would write itself to the disk. Brilliant. But I won't stop there. He worked for a couple of years at Commodore on Amiga Unix. Thank you. He created, by the way, I was telling Paris about MUDs, trying to introduce her to the idea of a multi-user dungeon. You did a MUD for VMS back in the day. Part of the inspiration for Tiny MUD. He wrote a video game that was launched eventually in the 90s as Olympia, one of the first multiplayer simulation games. He worked at Sun on IP-level encryption. You were one of the founders of DMOZ, which was one of the first search indexes under the Mozilla brand. And then I remember DMOZ. I used DMOZ all the time. I was very grateful to have that. This is well before Google. I mean, I can go on and on. Really appreciate the contribution you've made to the community. And you're doing it right now, running what is clearly one of the most important efforts to keep the information open and flowing for all of us. And it's controversial. You know, I got people in the YouTube saying, AIs will never, they're not humans. They're just sucking out all our brains. and I think by being so responsible at Common Crawl, you are diffusing that criticism and doing the right thing and creating something of immense value. I know Jeff feels the same way.
I do, and I'm back from a power outage. Can I ask Paris, because you are the devil's advocate on this topic in the show.
Famously.
Do you feel in better hands with Rich, having heard all this?
I never feel good about anything, but that's just my nature.
She's a nihilist.
Nihilism.
We really appreciate your time, Rich. We appreciate what you're doing. I hope people will visit Common Crawl, read Rich's article about SEO. I hope people who are responsible for content on the internet will understand this is the future of SEO. It's AIO, and it is really important for you as well as all of us.
Which is a much better title, by the way, than GEO, Generative Engine Optimization,
Ew.
which is dorky.
Ew.
Optimize for AI, because AI is coming.
It's
the
there.
future, and it's here. And let's do it right anyway. Let's do it as best we can, respectfully, but usefully.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Richard. I really
Thank you so
appreciate
much,
your time.
Rich.
I appreciate the kind words. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this highlight from Intelligent Machines. We do the show every Wednesday. You can watch us do it live. Or, as they say, like and subscribe. There's a link down below. Thanks.